Good afternoon. It is almost 4:30. If you're watching this video later, if you're watching live, you know it's almost 4:30. But or if you're just a few minutes behind, which would be great. And you're probably wondering. Let me hold on a second. Let me just get the video going here. There we go. Probably wondering about the title. Well, how about this? Is Jesus your Lord and Master, or just your latest fix? That sounds terrible. Um, and it's kind of, I don't know how to explain the how this came to be what you're currently looking at. I was sitting back and I was preparing for the study that I had planned for this afternoon for the audio, and some things happened, as will happen from time to time. Some life happened, and I sat back and I started trying to get ready as I was eating lunch a little bit ago. Well, 2 hours ago now. And this morning we had talked about that section of Philippians 1, starting in, what was it, 21, and going through the 26 or whatever of that particular chapter. And the big one, of course, being, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. And this has been weighing heavily on my spirit all day since last evening when I recorded this morning's show, because that was a recording that I did last evening. And I had some conversations with people today, and I didn't get into the details or anything, but there's stuff going on, just life going on. And as I'm talking to all of the different people that I'm kind of talking to, I'm seeing these little just spots where it's like this statement, the second half of verse 23. No, the whole verse 23. I'll read 21, 22, and 23 just because that way we can kind of talk about it. But for me, to live is Christ and to die is gain. If I am to go on living in this body, this will mean fruitful labor for me. Yet, what shall I choose? I do not know. I am torn between the two. I have a hard time wrapping my head around this. This is Paul, the apostle. I desire to depart and be with Christ, which is much better by far. But it is more necessary for you that I remain in the body. Convinced of this, I know I will remain and I will continue with all of you for your progress and joy in the faith. Now, there's a part of me that I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, how we are, our culture, our society. If I were to write a letter that had that in it, in some form, if I am to go on, this will mean fruitful labor for me, yet what shall I choose? I don't know. I'm torn between the two. I desire to depart and be with Christ, which is better by far. I desire to depart, die, and be with Christ, which is better by far. If I were to write a letter including that to people, to someone, and my therapist got, read it or whatever, they would have me committed on suicide watch, right? Reading this, if you don't know the context of the story, the gospel truth, if you don't know all of that, this sounds almost suicidal. I desire to depart, to die, to no longer be here. And yet I'm going to stay. Now, I know that I will remain. Convinced of this, I know I will remain. And I will continue with all of you for your progress and joy in the faith, so that through my being with you again, your joy in Christ Jesus will overflow on account of me. Now, that floors me to think about it, because when I start to think about it, I realize that, and I think this is one of the things that I learned throughout the time that I was ill for the last couple of months. When it was really bad a couple of months ago, I still have some marks on me and I still have some pain, but it's waning. It's pretty much gone. I say that, but then tonight I'll be in so much pain it's not even funny. Um, but to me, it's kind of almost pretty much gone. Like it's not even something I really think about until nighttime, and most of the time I only think about that because it's hard for me to get to sleep. I get to hurting a lot in the evenings, and when that happens, I'm kind of like, ugh. But there was a time while I was in the thick of it, the worst of what I was going through, where I wasn't I wasn't suicidal. I've never in my life been suicidal. Um, but it wouldn't have hurt. Like it wouldn't have upset me. Like I'd have been okay. Even right now. Even right now. I love my life. I want to continue on in this life, and I want to try to help people see the truth of Christ, of the love of God through Christ, and the offer of His grace and forgiveness and reconciliation that He has offered us. I want nothing more than to spread that. But as I start to think about this, I start to realize that for a lot of people, Christians included, my wife, one of them, because her and I've had this discussion, they're not sure. I know if I die in my sleep tonight, tomorrow, it will be better. Tonight, seconds later, as I transition into the afterlife, whatever that actually looks like, we have all kinds of conjecture about what happens when you die between now and the time that Christ returns. Whatever it is, it's going to be better than having to deal with all of the stress and um, turmoil that we deal with literally all the time. Um, there's no doubt of that. You know, when we say, and a lot of people say it, but I don't know how many people really truly understand it. When we say they're in a better place now, when we're talking about someone who's deceased, we say they're in a better place now, assuming they're saved. We're right. But do we really understand that? Do we really know it? Do we really believe that that's the case? That's the question. Which begs the question of what is our, if that's the case, then what is our motivation? Like I've talked about this before, that if the only thing required for salvation, if it's punch the ticket, get baptized, and you're saved, and there's no need to do anything after that at all, there's no further mission, then wouldn't it be better for me to die as I'm being baptized? Right? Like, or as I'm giving my life, as I'm giving my heart to Christ? Would it not be better if it just ended so that I can't turn around and screw it up later? Especially if there's nothing else to do. If there's no other place to go, if there's no other purpose behind all of this, then I seriously have to look at this and I have to say, okay, what Paul says here is right. It's right to depart and be with Christ. For someone like me who's saved, that would be better. Why is that not what I'm shooting for? Why is it, Chuckles? Why is it that you're not aiming for the glorious death, as they might say? I think about how many people who I can think of a few in my lifetime who I think have been affected positively on, in my actions and behaviors. Um, I sit back and I kind of look at it and I go, okay, so what's to change this statement? What Paul says here in Philippians about dying and being with Christ would be better by far. And these are not minced words. These are not confused things that he's saying. if you go all the way back to the end of verse 18 and start there, we'll start at the beginning of verse 18. But what does it matter? The important thing is that in every way, whether from false motives or true, Christ is preached, and because of this I rejoice. Yes, and I will continue to rejoice. For I know that through your prayers and the help given by the Spirit of Jesus, what has happened to me will turn out for my deliverance. I eagerly expect and hope that I will in no way be ashamed, but will have sufficient courage. Now, as always, Christ will be exalted in my body, whether by life or by death. He's stating that whether this turns into me dying, whether I live and I'm delivered from this situation, regardless of what it is, I know it's going to be for the good, right? That's what he's saying. God works everything for the good. I eagerly expect and hope. Oh, I jumped back a little bit. Where are we at? We're at 21. Again, this, and 21's the kicker for me. For me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. And when I say to live is Christ, what are we talking about there? Well, his ultimate goal in life was to serve Christ, right? After his road to Damascus moment, his ultimate goal in life was to serve the mission that Christ put us on. Isaiah 61, we're going to read that in just a minute. And for him to live at that moment, he's in prison. He could die at any moment. They could literally, they just walk in and kill him if they wanted to, really. So he could die at any moment. What he's saying is that although he should, according to the way we look at it, fleshly desire, the best would be to die. The best would be for us to just die and call it a day. Go home and be with Christ. You can argue that point. Now, the thing is that's not submitting to the Lord's will. The Lord's will for me isn't that I give up last month when I was sick and die. The Lord's will for me was that I keep fighting and I keep glorifying his name and I keep trying to help people understand what they're missing when they're not accepting this gift that he's offered through his son's sacrifice on the cross. And then comes the part that really gets me. Yet what shall I choose? I do not know. That means I take Paul at his word. That means at that time he was like, I don't know, man. So when I'm having doubts and I'm having problems and I'm sitting here thinking, boy, I'm in so much pain. It would just, oh Lord, just take me home. For me, that would be the best. It would be the best. I love my life. I don't want to die. I love my family. I love everything that I get to enjoy every day on this world. And I love sharing the Lord's word with you and with anybody else who might see or hear it. But if I chose to go, if I chose to depart, as Paul says, I'm torn between the two. I desire. Paul, when he wrote, this isn't modern day language. We say we desire things all the time. We don't really desire them. I've heard so many women say they just want a nice guy while ignoring all the nice guys in their lives and chasing after the bad boys. I've heard people say they desire to serve the Lord while qualifying it with as long as there's no inconvenience there, as long as there's no, basically fill in the blank. I've said I desire a better relationship with Christ. I desire aligning my heart with the Lord while not actually taking necessarily all the steps that need to be taken to make that happen. I've done that. We've all done that, but I've done that. I want to make sure that we understand that when I talk about these shortcomings and these failings and places where we've fallen, it's almost always, it's 99.99999% of the time. No, it's 100% of the time something that at some point in my life I've struggled with. I want to have a more involved relationship with the people who we fellowship with at our church. And yet, sometimes it's hesitant. Matter of fact, 20 minutes ago when I was inviting a woman and her 2 children over tonight, they're going to be here in about an hour. Oh, thanks. My wife just walked in the door and I'm now informing her that we're going to have company sometime in the next hour. um, there's this whole thing of like, oh, tonight would be inconvenient. Oh, Sue's not home yet, and the house is still kind of cluttered from Christmas, and da 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 da. There's a million reasons not to have people over and kind of enjoy that fellowship. But at the same time, if I put it off now, when are we going to get a chance to do it again? What could we end up discussing tonight? What could we end up discovering this evening together, enjoying each other's company and fellowshipping together that we wouldn't discover if we didn't? So it's like, no, yeah, no, I literally, I was like, hey, if you guys aren't doing anything, come on over. We have a bunch of leftovers from Christmas dinner. We'll heat that stuff up. Everybody can eat. It will create a situation where we don't have 84,000 pounds of leftovers. Also, it means we get to provide a few bites to eat for somebody and spend a little time with some kids who could probably benefit from, and their mother who could probably benefit from being around us. Hopefully, maybe we'll benefit from being around. I don't know. It's just a matter of wanting to spend that time and be with someone. So, the title of the video. I want to get back on track because I want to wrap this up pretty quick so I can go help my wife get ready for surprise company. Sort of surprise company. I told her the other day we were doing this. I just didn't know it was going to be today. The title of the video is Jesus your Lord and Master or just your latest fix? Seems very derivative, but it's a serious question. And it's a question we should ask ourselves. People suffer from all sorts of addiction, right? And you guys know that this has become a real spirit-stirring situation for me, this addiction, whether it's addiction to your phone, addiction to my coffee, addiction to serious drugs, gambling, porno, whatever. These things have become issue for me because it affects people, drives them away from the Lord, causes so much chaos and see, if I'd have just stuck to the script, sorrow and just terror in the world, causes so much terrible stuff in the world. The only way to combat this is to do things that are going to make it better, right? And we get this false sense of better from something called serotonin. And what's the other one? Endorphins? No. What's the other? There's another one. I don't remember. It's a chemical released by the brain that makes you happy. Serotonin and something else. I can't remember the other one. And it's this addiction. So a lot of us, we pick up our phones and we bring up our phone and we look at our Facebook or we look at our Twitter feed or we look at whatever, and that helps to really, I think it is endorphins. That helps to release endorphins and serotonin in your brain and in your physiological, that chemical in your body that gives you this euphoric feeling, right? It's established that this happens whether it's picking up your phone, actually doing drugs, for smokers, smoking a cigarette, drinkers, alcohol, gamblers. When they gamble, that's, it makes you feel better. Something makes you feel terrible, the first thing you want to do is go to that thing that makes you feel better. And I'm not saying that it's a terrible thing to go to Jesus to make you feel better, but what I'm saying is that is it just another fix? Is it just another place where I go for that temporary good feeling? Because for me, and I can only speak for me, that's not it. I recognize that sometimes, even while I'm following Christ, sometimes I'm going to feel bad. I'm going to have tragic things happen, terrible things happen. I'm going to lose loved ones. I'm going to lose friends, or I'm going to lose weight because I get sick. I lost like 30 pounds while I was sick. And I would go to the doctor while we were dealing with all that, and they'd be like, you lost 10 more pounds. I'm like, yeah. It's at the time we thought it was, what do we think it was? Rocky Mountain Spotted Fever. At the time we thought it was Rocky Mountain Spotted Fever, and I said, it's the Rocky Mountain Spotted Fever diet. And my doctor laughed. I was like, I'm going to tell everybody, just go get bit by a tick that's infected with Rocky Mountain spotted fever. You can drop 20 or 30 pounds in a matter of 2 months. But, and it was a joke, but at the same time, it kind of wasn't, because I did. Like, I could see people, like, people have done that. People have done all kinds of weird things because they saw somebody who accidentally got some results that they'd like to have out of this terrible thing. So I'm going to go try this terrible thing on myself because I'm not, I've had this conversation with my son CJ. We've talked about the whole possibility of overdose and da 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 da. And this is a thing with drug addicts. Some drug addicts will look at you and say, yeah, but I'm not like that guy. I'm not a wimp. I'm not going to die from it. And I looked at my son, and he had a friend about 2 years ago who overdosed. And we were talking about it one day, and I said, buddy, I said, now you know why I'm so animate to try to get you and your friends and your brother and everybody help to help free you from these addictions. And he's like, yeah, but I'm not like him, Dad. I'm tough. Okay, I can tell you right now, and I said this the other day, and I hope that I put it out there enough that it sticks with people. Phillipsburg Recovers Project is not about my sons. My son Bobby is doing fairly well. Still has life challenges, but he's clean. Our friend Matt, clean and sober for quite some time now, got a good job, doing well. I can give you another dozen people who we've worked with that it's worked out great, and I can give you just as many that it turned into a disaster. People who we've tried to help along the years. This isn't a new thing for me. I've been doing this for years personally. Wanting to do it on a grander scale with Phillipsburg Recovers, that's a new thing for me. But helping people has been something. My wife says I take in strays. I take in stray humans like she takes in stray animals. And the last cat she got, it was, I said no more, and she said until you take in another stray. Like she just assumes that's going to happen. She's over there bobbing her head right now, like, because it will. I don't look at them as strays anymore. I told my daughter this morning, I said one of the happiest moments yesterday at Christmas was sitting back and realizing that, and please don't take this in any way other than the way it truly is. There was one gift exchanged in my house yesterday. My daughter bought my wife something and gave it to her. We didn't get any gifts for her or the kids. We didn't get any gifts for each other. I did buy one gift for my wife. She's not getting it till later on this week, but I did get one gift for my wife. And I don't care. My gift for my children, my gift is time, compassion, and the greatest gift that Nakoma or any of my children could ever give me. My daughter Linan adopted a cat 2 days ago, even though she doesn't like cats. Adopted a cat 2 days ago because it was sickly and needed a home. And she's like, well, I just knew nobody else was going to take this cat, and I had to. And I was emotional because it was Christmas Eve, and this is our first Christmas after her nan died, and her and my mother were very close. So she ended up adopting a cat because she was emotional. And to me, that's a gift. To me, my daughter brought home our cat Bowser. I don't like cats. Especially annoying cats. And, since all cats are annoying, my wife is just grinning at me. Well, that cat loves me. Comes up and hops on my lap. He sits out here on the chair sometimes when I'm doing the show. He'll sit right here on the chair and just purr at me while I'm doing the show. You guys have probably heard it. You've seen him jump up on the table and do stuff on different videos. I'm not a fan of cats. I would never go out and get a cat. But my daughter brought this cat home and had it for days, by the way, before they told me about it. Because she found him in the woods and he was sickly and he had been abandoned by his mother, and he was what, like 3 weeks? Yeah. He was like a 3-week-old kitten. And my daughter went, we can't leave him. Took him to her friend Riley's house at first, I think. Yeah. And then snuck him down to our place and had him in our bedroom and didn't want to tell me about it. And then finally, a couple of days later, she decides she's going to tell me about it because she figures eventually she's going to get caught. And better to tell Dad before I get caught than. But she just knew. She had this knowledge. I was telling a friend of mine, Claire, about this a little bit ago. My daughter had this knowledge that her father would ultimately forgive her bringing home this cat and help her to help make him better and healthy and strong because it's just dad. My daughter Lynn talks about the fact that her ex-husband lived with us for several years, and she has people sometimes, and I know this because she's told me about it. She'll have people sometimes, I can't believe your dad has your ex living with him and you're okay with that. And she's like, well, I'm not okay with it, but that's my dad. So I think about that, and it hurt my daughter's feelings that her ex lived with me. Of course it did. I didn't want to hurt her feelings. I don't do anything to try to hurt people. At the same time, I was trying to have compassion for somebody. I was trying to help somebody to better and further their life. And I just don't have it in me necessarily to be like, nope, you're done, get out. I just don't have. We were talking about somebody who's living in one half of my house, and I was talking about how I may have to throw them out because they're just not trying to better the situation that they're in. And a friend of mine, I was talking to him, and I was just kind of talking through this stuff, and I was going, okay, and he looked at me, he says, we both know you're not going to throw him out. And I was like, well, I mean, it's going to come to a point where I don't have a choice. Well, yeah, and then you will, but it's going to be the point where you have no choice, because as long as you have a choice, you won't give up on a person. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. And for anybody who's like thinks it's just ridiculous that I am that way, I need to explain to you that I get my enabling behaviors from my Father, heavenly and earthly. My earthly father would hold me accountable. He could be the birth of my love isn't blind, it's reckless. My heavenly father and then my earthly father are perfect examples of love that isn't blind, it's reckless. Love sees the wrongs that we commit, but is reckless in loving us through them. My dad, my earthly father, used to say that you can't stop the kids from making a mess. All you can do is make sure you're there with a mop and some paper towels when they realize how much of a mess they've made. And my father, my earthly father, who graduated the 8th grade, is how he used to say it. He said, I graduated the 8th grade and went to work as a welder. Probably one of the wisest men I've ever known. Probably one of the most intelligent men I've ever known, even though, according to our standards, he would not be what you would call book smart. He was a very, very intelligent man in that he could see things in a way that a lot of us don't. He could just step back and go, wait, look, here's what makes sense, in a way that a lot of us have a hard time with. More and more every day, as a matter of fact. So this year, and I realize today's December 26th, but we're in Limbo week, as I called it in the title. So I want to, this video is kind of, it was supposed to be an Isaiah study, and it kind of evolved into something different, because I feel like the Spirit's leading me in a certain direction, and I've committed to follow that direction that the Spirit is trying to lead me in, so I'm going to do the very best I can to follow that direction. And I want everybody who watches this video, everybody who sees what's coming up over the next few days, the rest of our Christmas Limbo week, I'm going to do everything I can to rail against the Burger Kingdom of the Heavens, to rail against having it your way, to help people understand what it means to truly submit to the Lord. And some of it might be a little crass, some of it might be a little bit offensive. I might hurt your feelings. I'm going to warn you that if you're somebody who likes to watch my videos, please subscribe, but no, there's no such thing as a safe space. I'm not trying to hurt anyone. But if the truth offends your sensibilities or hurts your feelings, then you might want to take a real close look at what that means, because it's going to be the truth. And if I say something that you're like, that's not the truth, that's Chuck's ego, I want to see an email or a text. Or just call 814-651-8865 and say, listen, knucklehead. And we'll discuss it. I'll put you on the air. We'll discuss it on the air. We'll discuss it on video. I'll bring you on Zoom. And I'll put you up here on the screen. You can be up here on this side over here. We'll get rid of the little Bible verses that are floating through and put your picture right there. And they can see a video of you, and the two of us can sit here, or 7 of us, or 12 of us, or 24 of us. I don't care. I'll put on whoever wants to come on. I want you to come on and tell me. Now, if you're just going to try to dismiss and disrespect my beliefs and my way of life and the Lord and Savior that I serve, don't bother. But if you want to have a real conversation about the truth, then please, feel free. Call me. We'll set it all up. Because that's what he would want us to do. Because that's what we should be doing. I was talking to a friend earlier, and I'm gonna wrap things up with this. I was talking to a friend earlier about random acts of kindness. He did a thing at his church, a scavenger hunt. He gave him a list of things to do, kind things to do throughout the Advent season, from beginning of December through Christmas or whatever. He said, here's a list of things, and he said, try to do one each day at least. And he and I were talking, and I was like, yeah, we need to do that, because I was talking about that the other day, and somebody who I was talking with said, well, the problem is that if you go to open a door for a woman, sometimes they'll react. They don't know what to do, or they get scared, or if you offer to help somebody take their groceries to their car, they get a little apprehensive because it's not a normal thing. We don't do it. So what I want, and I've been thinking about this, my resolutions, New Year's resolutions, I want to make it not abnormal. These small little niceties and kindnesses we used to show each other all the time. 30 years ago, if a woman was walking towards the grocery store door, and a woman and a man are walking towards the grocery store door, and the man stepped forward and pulled the door open, she wouldn't hesitate. She'd say thank you, walk through the door, because it was just a normal thing to do. About a year or so ago, a friend of mine, his wife was at Hometown Market getting groceries here in Phillipsburg, and I saw her pushing her cart out, and my wife and I were pushing a cart out. And I looked at my wife and I said, I'm going to go help Ethel. And she said, okay. And she took our cart, which had a couple of things in it, off to the car she went. My wife didn't hesitate. Didn't say, what do you mean you're going to go help? Didn't think about it. I said, I'm going to go help. She didn't even realize who it was. It was a co-worker's wife. Somebody we knew. She didn't even realize who it was. She was just, she fully expects that. It doesn't bother her at all. When I brought Matt home, it wasn't a surprise at all for my wife that I said that my son could have his friend come and that we would help him figure out what his next steps in life were. Because for my wife, that's just what we do. So why is it the abnormal thing? I said, this happened to me years ago. I was at a I forget what it was. I think it might have been a Days Inn. It was in Franklin, PA. And it was a winter. And I was standing outside one of the doors. And they had a sidewalk that kind of went through and kind of went down and then back up, right? And it was a little slick and icy out. And I saw this young woman walking, and in my head, in a split second, this is going to take a little while to explain, but in a split second, all this kind of took place in my head, and it drove me nuts. Because I realized she was going to slip. And she had like coffee in her hands and her purse and whatever. And I realized she was probably going to slip. And then she started to slip. And my instinct, as a man with compassion for human beings, my instinct was to reach out and grab her and stop her from falling down and maybe hurting her butt. But at the same time, because of the society we live in, my fear took over. Because I thought, if I brush up against the wrong part of her body, next thing you know, I got sexual assault charges, I'm in jail, I'm dealing with all that. And now, like I said, it takes a little while to explain, but you can see how in your head, you kind of go through it the whole way. I literally ended up taking a step back so that there was no confusion on camera, because they had a camera, so that they could see that I was nowhere near this person, didn't trip her, didn't help her, and I was disgusted. I came home and I told my wife about it. I came home that week after work. At the end of that week, I came home after work and I told my wife about it, and I said, I will never do that again. And my wife said, well, you got a point. If you had reached out and grabbed her, you risked the possibility of some kind of crazy charge, some kind of crazy BS and whatever. And that's not wrong. I'm not going to sit here and say it's wrong. What I'm going to say is that it doesn't matter. You've heard people say dance like no one's watching, right? I hope you dance like nobody's watching you. I don't. I hope you dance like you don't care who's watching you. My daughter admitted to my wife and I earlier today that sometimes she doesn't like to go to church because she feels like people are looking down on her. Not because of anything anybody's done. She readily admits this. Nakoma said, no, it's not that anybody did anything to make me feel that way. It's just kind of how I feel sometimes because she's very uptight about it. So she's not angry at people because nobody's ever done anything to make her feel that way, for the most part. It's just this kind of thing she has to deal with. And she's like, it's weird. She was talking about holding her boyfriend's hand, I think. And she was like, I want to hold his hand in public, but I don't like to hold his hand in public because I feel like people will judge me. And I looked at her and said, F them. That's what I told her. If people judge you, F them. I'm not here to be judged by any of you. Do I want the people watching this video, the people in my life, the people who I respect and have a great deal of admiration for, stuff like that? My friend Claire, our pastor, Pastor Ryan, the elders at our church, do I want those people to like and respect me? Does it feel good if one of them pays me a compliment? Absolutely. But if following the Lord and the Lord's will in my life makes me look like a moron and makes these people, which it shouldn't, because following the Lord's will for other Christians should be something where they look at it and go, man, that guy, that's what I want. I don't want. I don't even want them to tell me. I just want people to be like, man, what is going on? I want somebody to come up and be like, dude, what is going on with you, man? I watched that whole time that you were sick, and all the videos you made were positive, and oh, this sucks, but man, life's great. Like, this sucks, but man, the Lord is so amazing in what He does for us to make sure we're taken care of, to give us what we need, to give us His love, to show us why we do what we do. I want somebody to look at me and say, you know, what's with that? So that I can turn around and go, listen, open this book over here. Not listen to the words I have to say. Forget the words I have to say. I'm a moron. All you got to do is take this little bugger. Cute little book. Cute little Bible. Look at it. It's not just cute little stories, people. Read it for real. These aren't cute little stories. Read that section of Philippians we just read. Paul's talking about how it would be better to die. Like, he literally is, you know, not in so many words, but it actually is in so many words. What am I saying? What shall I choose? I do not know. I am torn between the two. I desire to depart. See, this translation into the word depart, I'm gonna do a word study on this tonight. We're gonna talk about it tomorrow, because that word depart, that means die, man. I desire to leave this fleshly body and be with Christ. You know what? I desire that. Forget Paul. Great man of the Bible that Paul was. Forget Paul. Let's talk about us. Let's talk about we. Let's talk about me. The me of we. We should desire to be with Christ. That doesn't mean we should be suicidal. It means we should understand that when we're finished, when our work is done, in Acts, I forget exactly where. I think it's like chapter 2 or something, which I'm going to find, and we're going to talk about it before we read our Isaiah reading and get on. I'm going to try to find this real quick, because they're talking about, David, right? And Stephen seized, Stephen. I mean, let's talk about Stephen. Come on, man. The stoning of Stephen while he was being stoned. You know, Jesus, while he was being crucified, said, Father, forgive them for they know not what they're doing. And people were like, wow, that was Jesus. Well, wait a minute. Because Stephen fell on his knees and cried out, Lord, do not hold this sin against them. And when he had said this, he fell asleep. Paul, who was Saul, was there at the time, because it goes in the first verse of chapter 8, and Saul was there giving approval to Stephen's death. Saul, who became Paul, who became one of the great men of the Bible. Oh man, I think we're going to read through Acts this coming year too. I think we have to. Let's see. Where was this? I think it's later. Like, um, probably would have been better just to kind of do a search on the internet and let myself find it. But it talks about David. When David's work had been finished, he went to sleep. That's death. He died. When David had completed his work for the Lord, he went to sleep and died. He went to sleep and it was over. So that completion, that completion of our work is, it's Acts 13:36. See, I told you I should look it up on the internet. It's a lot quicker. That internet thing, it's magic and stuff, right? Acts 13. I know. 36. Let's see, where are we at here? So it is stated elsewhere, you will not let your Holy One see decay. For when David had served God's purpose in his own generation, he fell asleep and was buried and with his fathers, and his body decayed. But the one whom God raised from the dead did not see decay. Now that's referring to Christ going up into heaven without seeing decay, but also this part where David fell asleep, which actually comes from Psalm 16, it looks like, from the Old Testament in Psalm. So we'll go back and look at that real quick, because you know how much I love to jump back and look. This is why these videos turn out to be an hour instead of half an hour. You go back to 16, and it said verse 10, so let's look and see what it says in that area. From the wicked who assail me. Nope, that's not the one I was looking for. I'm in the wrong place. Well, anyway. When David served his purpose for the Lord. When David served the Lord's purpose in his life, he fell asleep and was buried with his fathers, with his ancestors, and he died, and he decayed. I don't know, like, how much more to make this apparent is that that's where we're at, man. Like, or it's where we should be. If it's not where we're at, it's where we should be, right? So, coming up as we celebrate the end of 2023, the new beginning of 2024 here in January, the new year, I would very much like for anybody who would like to join me in this, go to God's Love Live, register a username, and we'll get it all set up by the 1st. And starting on January 1st, we'll have this lively discussion, hopefully going on God's Love Live, where we can post comments and questions and stuff like that, and really kind of start getting into the brass tacks of this. How do we serve the Lord? We know this is what he wants. How do I serve my purpose now? Because I want to serve my purpose. I want to reach that point of where David reached, serve my purpose, lie down, fall asleep, and wake up with God in eternity. However, whatever form that takes. How about you? Is God and Jesus, are they our Lord and Savior and Master of our lives, or are they our latest fix? Are they where we go when things get tough to feel better about ourselves? Which is it? Which is it going to be? You know, if the answer is he's my latest fix, but I realize that that's not the right way to be and I want to change that, it's not a give up kind of thing. It's not, well, yeah, I screwed this up big time, I guess I'll just give up. I mean, that would be the easy way, right? Ultimately, until the end. But it's not the way, man. It's not the way we should be. We should definitely move into that place of going, okay, if I ain't getting it right, how do I get it right? I want to know that. If I ain't getting it right, how do I get it right? If you got some suggestions, chuckles at godslovelive.com. Tune in tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. bright and early. I'm not going to guarantee that our morning show is going to be light and fluffy and me just introducing music anymore, because this whole discussion that ended up eating my entire day started this morning because I was really just kind of thinking about this being the first year that we have that my mother's not with us for Christmas, and um, how like different everything was, because you know a lot of our joy in the Christmas season came from our family, and that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. But what are we celebrating? Because ultimately, when you think about it, when we're celebrating the birth of Christ, we're celebrating his sacrifice. Wait a minute, Chuck, that's Easter. No. No. No, 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 no. There's kind of a three-part sacrifice here as far as this whole kind of situation goes. The very first sacrifice made by the Lord for us would have been our creation, allowing us to keep our free will that my wife prays every day that we get rid of. Not every day. I don't think she prays that every day anymore. Just often. Because giving us free will meant giving us the ability to reject him, which meant which meant opening himself up to the possibility of suffering the pain that comes when one of us is lost for good. When someone dies without being reconciled to God, without being saved, that pain that he must go through is unfathomable by us, lowly, simple human beings. That's, like it or not, that's a fact. Then, God the Son sacrificed his holy divine power to step into, through his mother Mary, a fleshly, limited child and an ultimately adult person, a human, to become fully human, to walk this earth perfectly the way the Father wants us to, earning the eternal reward of following the Lord's tenets, precepts, laws, earning that reward. He then turned over that reward by taking our sin and our punishment onto himself and gave us his reward that he earned. Think about it. Think about that entirety of that story. He gave us free will, knowing that his son would have to sacrifice, knowing that he himself would have to sacrifice, because Jesus, God the Son, was part of that. God the Holy Spirit was part of that, as was God the Father. As my wife thinks about throwing something at me because I'm talking about that again, and she gets, how can Jesus be God and his son at the same time? We've gone through that a bunch of times. But the Holy Trinity, as they were creating us, as the Holy Trinity was creating us, decided to give us free will, the ability to reject them. If you're a parent, think about that. If you had the ability, think about the last 5 horrible mistakes your child made. If you had the ability to take away their ability to make that bad decision, would you do it? And I asked that question being a parent who has that same thought in mind. My son CJ called me just before Christmas to let me know he had been arrested and he's in jail. There wasn't anything I could do. He violated his probation. They put him in jail. We have to just kind of wait until they decide what they're going to do with him. There's not a whole lot we can do. I called in a few friends and said, hey, maybe we can make some kind of arrangement to get him into a rehab and da-da-da-da-da. But there wasn't a whole lot I can do. He's going to sit in jail on Christmas. And I told my wife afterwards, I said, I feel kind of bad because I'm a little relieved. And as somebody who's dealing with a family member who struggles with addiction, you do feel relieved when you know there's somewhere where they're less likely to have that final time of using to overdose. You do feel eventually relieved. Like you can't help it. You can't help. I was happy to know that my daughter got my wife a gift. But there was also a part of me that's a fleshly part of me that, or could have been, I don't think I really did, because for me it was like, cool, you got your mom something, that's awesome. And the way you live your life is literally gift enough for me. If you know my daughter Nakoma, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But my daughter Linan, same thing. You know, in a lot of ways, we don't agree on everything politically. We don't agree on everything religiously. But the way she lives her life, for the most part, not that she always does everything perfectly right, but overall, the way she lives her life, I couldn't be prouder of either of them, especially my daughters. My son Tyler, same thing. Bobby and CJ. CJ's in jail right now and he's struggling with addiction, but I'm going to tell you right now, my children, when they're not in this terrible place, all of my children are these amazing human beings that throughout my entire life, or however long we've been together in our lives, have done nothing but inspire me to be better. All right, it is almost 6. Nope, it is shortly after 5, quarter after 5. We should be getting company pretty much any moment. I'm going to go ahead and let you go just under an hour, as is probably the right way to do things. I hope that you'll subscribe, go on YouTube or go on Facebook, like and follow and share and spread this message out. And I know it's not the most polished, it's not the greatest, I'm not the greatest speaker or biblical theologist you're ever going to see. That much I know for sure. But what I do know is that some of what we discuss might help other people. So if you know somebody who this might help, send it to them. God bless you and keep you until the next time we're together. And thank you for joining me. Thank you for tolerating me. Have a great night.